And the biggest thing that people struggle with is letting go of control. Got it to this point, like doing what you do because you're so good at it. But if you can't rely on the systems and the foundation that you set, as well as the right people to put it into play, you're never going to grow past where you are.
When people come to you and they're trying to make a hire, what is the first thing you kind of have to talk about with them to make sure that they're kind of set up for success?
Clarity before you hire is key. I mean, it's key to everything that you're doing. You have to be clear in order to lead a team, but especially to bring new team members on. And if you're expecting one thing and you get something else, it's because your desired outcomes aren't dialed in.
Welcome to another episode of Founders Growth. My name is John Hill, aka Small Mountain. I'm the founder of Adapted Growth, and today on the show we have Michele Lambert. She is the founder of BellaConnections, and she helps small business owners, especially in the internet marketing space, get connected to the teams that they're looking to build so that way they can have the outcomes that they're looking for. Michele, can you talk a little bit more about who you work with specifically in this space?
Yeah, so BellaConnections specifically is helping place talent for 7 to 8 figure business owners. We do work with some 9 figure as well, but we're heavy in the direct response, direct to consumer, e-com kind of space. We do a little bit of coaching as well, but really for internet marketers and online business owners. So that founder or creative lead that is just really struggling to get things done and ready to offload some tasks, we're going to hire your marketing right hand, your operations leader, marketing leaders, as well as creative and support talent.
Perfect. Okay, so I am very excited to talk with you because I have the belief that hiring is one of the hardest parts about growing a business, right? And in my experience, on sales side, people either wait way too long or they try to do it way too early. But I'm curious, let's zoom out a little bit of sales. What are the hard parts and what do people kind of struggle with when it comes to hiring when they're a founder?
Yeah, so it definitely depends on the stage of your business you're in. But let's say you're like early 7 or low 8 figures. So, let's start with early 7. Say, you've grown it to this far, but you're still the one who's doing all the things in the marketing side. You're still leading the team. You have a media buyer, you have a copywriter, you have all these people, but you're the one managing them. You're also doing the strategy and all the details, and you're the founder. So you're also doing operations and everything else. So, right there, we're going to look at somebody who's a little bit more marketing operations focused so they can oversee the team. They can have the big picture strategy. They can still collaborate with the founder on the strategy, but they're going to be the ones who are actually executing and ensuring the implementation of it.
Mm.
Watching all those pieces, managing the project management tools, unless you have a project manager to support them, which is always really helpful, especially when you're growing to, 8 figures, then you're going to really want somebody to support them a little heavier on the actual project management side. But yeah, really what you're looking for, and the biggest thing that people struggle with is letting go of control. We
Oof.
all think we can do it best. And there's points where, yeah, you do, you got it to this point, like doing what you do because you're so good at it. But if you can't rely on the systems and the foundation that you set, as well as the right people to put it into play, you're never going to grow past where you are. And you might even go further down, unfortunately. Mm.
So jumping in here for just a second, right? Because you hit on something that is kind of something I'm seeing a lot here recently, right? A lot of people are going after very specific people, right? And in marketing, that can mean that you've got someone who's doing your copywriting, you might have someone else who's doing your media buying, you might have someone else that's working on everything else like this. And I talk with a lot of people, and they really like having high levels of expertise in a siloed approach. But what I think some people kind of like miss out on is that if everyone is siloed, you got to have that kind of unifying conduit above those silos, right?
Mhm.
And if you're not good at that, right, you might really appreciate the difference that a media buyer, copywriter, creative ad specialist and stuff like that. But you can spend all of your time managing all of these people to make sure that they work very well together. What is your How do people avoid that kind of idea of like over siloing people and then still kind of being a manager of things that they maybe shouldn't be managing?
Yeah, so I think a lot of that comes from really ownership. So you want to be able to empower your team to take ownership over what it is their expertise is and their skill set. But you also need collaboration. And I would go as far as to say like it's not just marketing department collaboration, that's important to have regularly as well, but you
Hmm.
also want, your customer support, your sales team, your operations team because they all have insights directly into the customer, your ideal avatar, who you're talking to that's going to support the marketing department as well as production and deployment of everything and how that supports the marketing department and how you are talking to people. So in the end, what I suggest is I would have, set up regular meetings that are across the marketing team, have different themes for different meetings and clear agendas for every meeting that you go into. You're not just going in to have a weekly meeting that just is there. You have to have real clarity on what you're talking about. Like, are you going over
Yeah.
high level ideas? Are you going over structures? Are you, what is the exact intent and what are you trying to get from this? You can have a bigger team meeting on everything that's, talking about strategy, bringing in insights they're seeing from other departments and things like that as well. But in terms of, especially in the remote space and internet marketers, we like to be in our own little space in our own little world. So we're all, all over the world. We like to work, autonomously most of the time. And a lot of people want to have their own ability and flexibility of work. So in order to do that, it's allowing them the autonomy, but you really have to empower them to have ownership of decisions that is for their specific department or their role. And in order to do that, you have to set the right strategy, have the right leadership in place with real clarity, not only on the company values, but the direction and the strategy that you are currently taking in order for people to make clear decisions and be able to own their own projects. And that all comes really from leadership down. So leadership being clear, leadership being able to, have those collective collaborative calls, but then also have people be able to go off and make those ownership decisions and be available if they have questions on the decision, if they're unsure, making
Hmm.
sure that they have that clarity as well, I think is helpful.
I love that, right? And I love the idea that the meeting is for a purpose, right? So having a very clear agenda for that meeting, and it's not just a vibe check. And it also, in my opinion, shouldn't just be like, well, let's look at the scoreboard, right? There should be some context as to why the scoreboard is sitting in that way, so that way everyone can be moving forward. Um, when someone comes to you, right, and they're a founder, and we're going to dive into your founder path here in just a minute, but I'm just kind of curious because we're not in the exact same space, but there's a lot of overlap in what we do. When people come to you and they're trying to make a hire, what is what is the first thing you kind of have to talk about with them to make sure that they're kind of set up for success?
Yeah, that's a big one there. So clarity before you hire is key. I mean, it's key to everything that you're doing. You have to be clear in order to lead a team, but especially to bring new team members on. So knowing exactly like your company values, how your company culture and how you operate.
Mhm.
If you're expecting one thing and you get something else, it's because your desired outcomes aren't dialed in. Your clear ideal candidate avatar is not dialed in. You're not clearly stating exact specifics about the role requirements. That includes availability and everything else that goes into this. So, getting super clear not only on the role requirements and your expectations, but what are your desired outcomes for 30, 60, 90 days. I also do 6 months and a year. So people know what goals they're trying to hit. That helps set you up for the onboarding KPIs as well. And so you're really approaching this from a point of, okay, this is the data that I'm looking for in order to evaluate this performance. Getting really clear on who that person is, the ideal candidate avatar. There's like, with AI and everything, you can use all kinds of tools to develop this. We've developed some tools too that give you everything from like motivational traits and personality profile and background experience and all of that as well that really shows you exactly who you're looking for. And then once you're clear on the specific role, the requirements, the type of person that you need then and the onboarding structure, like what this role is going to own and what the KPIs are for it, then starting to look at candidates and start the hiring process. But if you're not
Hmm.
clear before and you're just hiring from a super reactive state, you're going to have somebody he's not around for the long haul and you're not going to be happy with the performance in the long run majority of the time.
Do you get a lot of, we were kind of talking about this before turning on the recording, right? There's so much information now about different working types and personality types and everything, as you touched on a second ago. And we were talking about the visionary entrepreneur, right? And people that are, trying to kind of be in that visionary status and want to maintain that kind of level of being innovative and forward thinking and stuff like that. Do you find that a lot of people are trying to hire from like a scramble, right? They're just trying to like get things off of their plate as opposed to coming in with like, okay, here's the role, here's the scorecard, here's the expectations for that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of, well, at least the positions that don't last, the positions that don't work out for the long haul. Those are typically fractional roles that are hired for anyway, so it's a lot of times it's a project-based thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, if you come into it from a reactive state without, total clarity, scorecards, all this kind of stuff, it's not really you're really not setting yourself or that new team member up for success, because they don't know what's clear. They might have one idea of what the KPIs and objectives are, where yours are completely different. And in order to really bring solid clarity around that, you need everybody on the same page. And that's why we start with desired outcomes, setting the right KPIs and the scorecard. And then from there, really just making sure that personality profile specifically, I did mention that. I put weight on it, but not a ton. That's not the everything, because as you
Hmm.
know, you can take those and maybe at different states of your life or different states, mental states and things like that, they might adjust a little bit. It's not the
Yeah.
end all be all of this person matches everything. I'm going to hire them for this. But it is a useful tool to see these are the personalities that fit well with this. Is this somebody who's motivated towards something? Is this somebody who's motivated away from something? Is this somebody who's going to really be more of a mechanic in terms of the wealth dynamics, or are they more of like a creative who is not as much going to be in the structural side of things? Like there's a lot of, pieces that you can look at and utilize these tests for, and like Colby scores. Let's say you need, a visionary, for example, is going to be a really high quick start with a low follow through, and usually around middle ground of the other two, like fact finder and things like that. So
Hmm.
if you are hiring for an integrator, you do not want them to have the same score as you, especially or same score as a visionary, especially because a high quick start with a low follow through on an integrator means that they're going to be just the same as you. They're going to be constantly running new ideas, starting the implementation, and then nothing gets completed. So you really need like the opposite of your score if you're hiring your right hand operations integrator kind of a person. So just
Yeah.
understanding the different types of people and how we all operate differently, and then how we operate in relation to each other to build a really cohesive team.
I I love that. We do a lot of personality stuff in all of our client work, right? Because until I think you really know who you are, I think most people just kind of assume that everyone is more similar than they are, or it's also super easy, I find, to kind of think that you're the only person with these unique set of concerns and strengths and, difficulties and everything. And uh, personality stuff was honestly kind of like what got me unlocked, as far as kind of like realizing that there was a different path and a different way for me to work. And like you, I don't use them in a black or white kind of blanket way either, right? But I do
Mhm.
find that they're very good to kind of test someone's awareness, and being aware in a sales role is very, very, very important, right? And it's super easy to kind of just fall into your personality patterns and routines and have the same consistent struggles. But people are deeper than a personality assessment, so we use them to try to figure out like, do you resonate with this, right? Because if you're thinking that it's all wrong, right, there's probably some bigger gaps and challenges coming down the pipe.
Mhm.
Um, what made you want to work in this space? Like, I'm curious. I'm always curious as to like the kind of the backstory. Was there like a something you unlocked in your own growth and marketing and hiring, and that kind of led you down this path, or was this just a need and you saw and you wanted to work on it?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of funny. It is definitely a long path and a road. And I've had a lot of, offshoots and different kind of businesses I started, but really how I got into, the online business internet marketing space was back in 2012, I was working for a doctor, an integrated practitioner, and he really wanted to be a New York Times bestseller, have an online business, do all these things. And it was exciting. It was fun. He asked me to be the right hand operations person to lead that. So he hired me as the operations leader, and mind you, I'd been working with him in the office for like 10 years at this point. So I knew him, I knew the products, I knew what we were testing. We were doing, clinical tests in office. We were developing product lines, different program structures, all that kind of stuff. And we are ready to bring it online. So
Yeah.
actually, it was super blessed and lucky that the COO and CMO of JJ Virgin's businesses at the time had stepped in to help train me, to help us build this online business. Our first launch was actually a New York Times bestseller. We sold 9,000 books in 36 hours. I stayed up
Wow.
all night just clicking the button, making sure we didn't go over. And we crushed it. It was so much fun. Like I loved it. I was so excited, really addicted to it after that point. The rush of it all. I loved building the product lines. We had a lot of custom physical products as well as digital products and all that kind of stuff. And it was just really fun to get to bring that out to people when I've already seen the impact that it made on so many people in office, and then seeing it hit thousands of people from here. And I still run into people at like events and things like that who are like, "Oh, you read that book or you were part of that book launch? I love that book." It still helps me to this day, like over 10 years later. So it's a really powerful moment for me of like understanding the impact of what digital marketing and online business can bring to people, and how it
Hmm.
can really help people, especially in what I feel is a pretty broken healthcare system, where we can actually bring a lot of integrative natural health and medicine and healing ways to help each other. And it's, not just that. So from there, I've of course helped launch a lot of different products and programs and things like that in integrative health space, which is one of the spaces I love. And then I started joining a bunch of new masterminds in the last 5, 6 years. And those included a lot of direct response marketing, understanding how that works and being able to bring it into this kind of integrative health side of business and life and building. So I was just meeting amazing people at all these masterminds. I started a list of people on a spreadsheet that I could connect when businesses asked, and it was just fun for me. So I had, built that out. It was just my Rolodex, and that eventually became, an actual full on Rolodex. We've got over 1,500 internet marketers on it now. We use it to really like connect businesses with talent. And it was just a natural thing that I was doing, is connecting people. So actually, a former mentor of mine suggested that I start this recruiting side of things for the internet marketing space. So we really have been focusing the last, 4 years on really team building primarily. So I still do consulting on the health building business side,
Hmm.
but the team building is where we've put our main focus and energy at this time. So yeah, it's been a
Interesting.
fun journey.
That it's I This is my favorite part of doing these interviews, right? And talking to, all the guests is like, how did we get to here, right? Because it's never as clean and as clear as a path as like, the business profiles make it out to be, right? Like everyone has got, maybe a couple of things that didn't work out, that didn't go according to plan. Maybe there was a pivot or three, along the way. And
A lot.
it's helpful because one of the things you and I talked about, in the pre-call was talking about like learning from the lessons when it doesn't work out, like not framing it as a failure and beating yourself up. I'm
Mhm.
curious how does that show up for you? How have you gotten better at like not beating yourself up and just kind of staying in experimental mode?
Yeah, that's a big one, because there's definitely like a lot of the parts. I mean, a lot of the reason that I do focus on the recruiting now is there were some big lessons, some big burnouts, honestly, some physical burnouts. And I would say is um learning from those and understanding like what my capacity is, what I really want my ideal life to look like, and how I can achieve that in a way that encompasses the things that excite me most. So in terms of, for me, like those lessons and like kind of pushing forward, is there's a funny meme I saw the other day. It was this guy who's like walking up these stairs, right? And he falls over and he bounces from a trampoline. He bounces back up a couple stairs down. And he walks
I've
a couple
seen
more
this.
stairs up. Yep. And it's just like back and forth. And then even when he hits the top, he still falls down, and it takes him a few times bouncing and bouncing and bouncing to come all the way back to the top. And it's like if you just give up at every failure, every like last attempt, then you're really missing your full potential, and you're not really fulfilling or seeing your dream through. So
Mm,
it's your own personal You have to really anchor in what you're striving for, and in order to and, like, what your ultimate goal is, and once you've anchored into that ultimate goal, it's just figuring out ways to make it happen. So, if you fail at one thing, that's not a failure, it's a lesson, it's a chance to look at it and say, "Okay, where did this not work, and how can I do this better the next time?" Because if you talk to most business owners, they've had at least, like, ten different failed businesses. Like, I started an
Mhm.
Amazon FBA monkey pillow business, I've started a craft business. I have started so many side things outside of this internet marketing thing, and it's like you try all these little things and you see what didn't work and figure out the steps that you can use, what feedback you can use to improve it, to improv to implement in a new way and be able to really see that ultimate dream of yours. And for most entrepreneurs, myself included, is freedom. It's time freedom and my ability to travel and do the things that I love. So it's fine anchoring in that in the end.
Nice. Okay. Um, we've kind of talked about it a couple of times, like in aside so far, but you know, it is super easy to get off the path, right? And that might mean chasing new softwares we were talking about before we turning on the recording, or it might be chasing every shiny AI tool or whatever the current fad is. How how have you gotten better at cultivating focus so that way you consistently get to where you're wanting to go? Like, how do you get better at shutting down the shiny object syndrome yourself?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely opportunities in time where we do need to look at things, reevaluate, possibly implement some new systems and structure. What we had talked about is the importance of keeping what's working going while you're doing that. And
Ugh,
so
yeah.
that you can't just burn it all down and say, "Hey, we're going to try this," and then it takes 6 months of testing of a new project. Especially with AI now, everybody's trying a million different new things, and that's
Mhm.
good. We should be. But you need to keep what's working rolling at the same time too. So that's one thing. And then with AI too, I think that there's a lot of system optimization out there and ways that we can really improve our workflow. The more you and your team are empowered by AI, the more productivity you have and the more ability you are to help more people, to grow your business, scale, all that good stuff. One thing
Mhm.
that I also find super helpful with this shiny ball syndrome that we were kind of talking about is I
Yeah.
learned this from another mentor, is I allow yourself to chase the shiny balls that excite you, but at least like once a quarter, once a month, whatever works for you. Sit down and like fully evaluate what it is you have on your plate, and what actually is contributing to your bottom line. And what that bottom line is whether that's financially, it's time freedom, it's whatever your ultimate goals are. So see what is actually contributing to that and ruthlessly cut anything that is not. So it gives you a little space to play a little bit, but don't get too deep into other things that are distracting you from the core that matters the most. So
Mm.
personally, I always set aside structured time to focus on my core. And then I have a little bit of time here. I put in time within my schedule specifically for big picture ideas, trying new things, testing new angles, like whatever it is, just don't let go of the core to think something else is going to be the new shiny ball, I guess is what helps
I
me.
love that. Yeah, that's super helpful. Um, so shifting gears just a little bit, right? Because one of the things that I'm excited to talk to you about is I know everybody has a different process to hiring, right? And I know some people, and they say the line of outsource your weaknesses first, hold on to your greatness until like the very last thing. And then I know other people who preach the other approach, right? The thing that you're strongest at, you know the best and probably easiest to put together a process and hand it off to someone else. How does Michelle think about these two different, very different approaches to like hiring, growth, and scale? Like, is one better than the other? Does it depend upon the person? How do you think about that with your clients?
I think it definitely depends on the person. That the second one sounds a little wild to me, to be quite honest. I would say that like if you have a sol okay, the way that I approach it first of all is I ask people to look at what are your actual bottlenecks and what do you love most? Like where's in your genius zone? So I have like a task audit that I do and I have
Mm,
people fill it out about how much time every task takes and I want you to rate it. I want you to rate, it takes over a little over a week or something. Just hold it next to you, even if you're just jotting things down, if you're actually filling this out, whatever's easier. But figure out what are the tasks that I'm actually doing and then rate them of how much enjoyment you have out of it. Not just like I mean, genius zone is important, and so is your
Mm.
enjoyment of what you're doing. So once you've discovered, what are the pieces that are actually like bottlenecking me, even if it's this one thing that takes 5 minutes, that's 5 minutes is the time isn't as important as the bandwidth, the mental bandwidth of switching between tasks. There's only so much bandwidth we have. We really like have like a core focus of around 4 hours a day of just really quality productivity time. And then outside of that, then, maybe some little tasks and things like that, calls, things like that come in. But for the most part, you want to really protect where your genius zone is and where the biggest needle mover for your business and yourself are. So if you
Hmm.
absolutely love this one thing and it lights you up to get to do that, and it's something you're really great at, then keep it and find the things that drag you down and find the right people to put in place for that. Whether, that's creating the direct process for them, working within their process and ensuring it fits your business. It doesn't really matter as long as you're focused on getting the right tasks on your plate and the wrong ones off.
Do you ever have anyone come in? I mean, I think time auditing is one of those, can be one of those periods to where we get a lot of awareness about maybe some of the things that are holding us back. Do you ever get anybody coming in with the idea, I have to do this? It's got to be me. And it's not really something that they should be doing. Do you run into that all the time?
All the time, all the time. Yeah, that's one of the biggest things, especially with founders and creators or marketing leaders that have grown and scaled this business because of their ability and their strength in marketing and all these things. Like they grew it to 7, 8 figures. This was
Hmm.
their brain. And to get them to replace that is incredibly difficult. That's why it's finding the pieces that are dragging them down and less important for them to focus on and really letting them focus on those big needle movers, the genius zones that excite them, the places where their mind is most important to be in and optimizing their time for that. So one of our clients, we did this with them. It saved him about 15, 20 hours a week. He had a new baby, he was able to spend time with his family. Like it was pretty intense. And what we had to do really is it took a little bit of time with this one because they were super heavy. Like they built this to 8 figures and it was like a really lean team. Like they're super deep in the marketing and they still are. They're one of the most brilliant business people I've worked with. And it took about 6 months of working with them directly, trusting that, getting them to trust me and starting to bring in the right people to be able to take the little tasks off. And those right people, honestly, in the end of the day, it cost them less than, I think it was around $8,000 a month or less, and they were able to save 15 to 20 hours a week. Now, if that was most business owners, like imagine what you can do with those 15 to 20 hours a week, especially if you're that good of a creative and that good of a marketer that you're able to grow to those 8 figures, like the amount of new testing and projects and things that you could launch with the right support who can actually manage the implementation. So it's just seeing where people are getting stuck. And most of the time for founders, creators, marketing, leadership, it is in the actual implementation management. That's where, that operational right hand, project manager, marketing manager, whatever it is super supportive and overseeing the rest of the team, ensuring projects are, go through, that you have the right data tracking to be able to see what you need to see in order to make the right decisions and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting place to play.
Thinking about that one person specifically, right? The you said that they're still very much a part of it and still invested in everything. How important is it for the founder or the leadership people to have, I would say, meaningful investment, right? I talk to a lot of people and they want to be a CEO. They want to be, running a business, right? Not because they have concern or any kind of like deep subject matter expertise. They just want to run a business because they want to be in charge. Do you do you think that that works, or do you think that people need to have some deep buy-in into like one of the areas to really get to the levels that people are coming to you with?
Um, I think, well, and maybe I need a little clarification in your question too. Do you mean like they're just that's like where they're started and they just want to be that business owner CEO, or did they have like a specific expertise and they want to grow into that? Like, can you explain a little bit more? Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. Like the term disruptors, right, is popular in a lot of my conversations, and so people will see, a perceived gap in the market, and they just want to go after that thing, but it doesn't come from like a place of like kind of like your story of kind of falling into it and then finding finding a lane within that. They just like they're in it for the wrong reasons, right? They just want to run a
Mm.
business so that way they can feel in charge and things like that. And they might have a great idea, but they don't really have that kind of this is important to me, or they're just trying to outsource everything so that way they don't actually have any kind of like tasks inside of it. Does that help? The
Yeah, there's it's funny, a friend of mine was recently trying to buy a business because they thought the same thing, like, oh, if I'm the business owner, I'll just delegate, I'll hire an operations manager, I'll
yes.
hire these people to do all the things and then I'll be out of it. And the reality is if you talk to any business owner, that is not their lifestyle. That
Yep.
takes that takes years and time of building to be able to step away to that point. And even then, a lot of owners who step away and even hire like a CEO or somebody else, sometimes it's not the best decision for them in their business. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
always work out. It's actually it's a risky move to make if you don't have the right structure and team in place. And all of that starts with like you need to have company values and alignment and a mission and vision. So, and that's how you attract the right team members and the right people and the right clients too. So,
Hmm.
customers, whatever it is. So if you don't have the right mission, vision, values, then you're just kind of shooting in the dark and kind of guessing and everybody's a little bit floundering. Nobody's totally clear. And if you're not totally clear and you're just trying to make money because you see a gap, you're not really aligned to something that's going to sustain long term when the nights get long, when the weekends are overrun, when your stress levels go out the roof and you need to start having the right team alignment as well to keep them on long term. Like the team members who last, years and years, they're aligned with the vision. They're excited about the results that they're seeing and getting for people. They believe in the mission and they're aligned to the values. Values are so important. I know a lot of people speak to this, but it really matters in order to actually scale business. So if you're thinking like, oh, I see this gap, like I can make it happen, there has to be a little bit more of a reason of how you can do that. And maybe there are some people who can say like, "Oh, I really wanna do that. I'm gonna align on it because I'm gonna make a lot of money, and that's the value that I'm looking for with everything." And then you're gonna attract that kind of person who and the team member, so they're looking for the they're looking for to make the money in that one little area that you found, a place where you can add value, or I guess not add value, but, create something. And then everything becomes about money instead of, and when money is tight or money, more money is offered because they're doing a really great job, then they're going to move on for that next opportunity if you don't have the right culture in place. So it's not impossible, but it's not recommended, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so I'm a big fan of values as well, right? And it's honestly been super helpful on my own path of being able to kind of slow things down and try to like understand the values of an organization so I can bring in the right person. When people come to you and let's say that they've not done the clarity work to really understand their values, is there a like do you okay, so first question, do you help people get clear on their values, or is there a book or a program that you kind of find yourself kind of recommending or referring people to that helps them get that clear? Because then it's not what drives me crazy is whenever it's like table stake stuff like service. Okay, cool. Like you're in a service driven business. This is a table stake. Like, you have to take care of your clients and customers, right? Like, where do you refer people or how do you help them get clear on the values that really matter to them on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, that's where AI is amazing. We've built a ton of tools around, clarifying your values, mission, vision, values worksheet. Even before AI, I had all these kind of worksheets and stuff that I still let people run through.
Mhm.
And I've developed that into some new AI tools and things like that that they can run to. You can also just work with AI directly, answering their questions, but make sure that when you do, you ask it for no fluff and true clarity on your values and your business. So you need to dig deep. Personally, I like to do a lot of journaling around that, and I suggest that for most people because journaling is a big help for me. Um, and I find that that's a little bit more helpful than going straight to AI because I find that when you only use AI for everything, your mind starts to get a little bit clouded and your creativity kind of lessens a little bit, and it gets a
Oh,
little
yeah.
frustrating. Yeah, like, I'm
Yeah.
sure you've noticed that where, like, you start getting suggestions and you're overwhelmed by the suggestions and they don't actually align with who you are all the time and what you're really trying to put out there. So, I still like the worksheets. I still give them out. I still hand them to, we have some free ones. I think it's, BellaConnections.com/hire. I think
Okay.
that's where they are. If not, I'll get you the link. But yeah, those assets
Perfect.
are there and it walks you through it so you can build it all out yourself. And yeah,
Yeah.
and AI tools and everything.
I love that, and I love talking about, because I think there's a lot of options and a lot of room to kind of become reliant on systems, but I'm nervous for the general public with how easy it is to become super reliant on AI, right? Like, it becomes this kind of thought partner, and I think that that can be very helpful. But I'm a huge fan. Like, I carry a journal everywhere I go because I don't want to become so reliant on having this like engine doing all the heavy lifting for me
Mhm.
because I think that eventually that's going to be what everybody's doing, right? And so if that is your entire thought loop, is what is in any one of these systems, we're only getting out the same things that everyone else is getting. Whereas, if you're still part of the process in a deeper, more meaningful way, I think there's still like a lot of room to make sure that you're keeping your skills sharp, first of all, but then also not just kind of like getting lost in all the slop that is, just rampant from like content to, websites that are, being built this way and everything else like that.
Yeah.
When you when let's talk about journaling for just a second. Do
Yeah.
you journal regularly, or do you just kinda use it as, like, a creative process or clarity process? What does that look like for you?
All of the above. Journaling literally, I feel like it changed my life. I know that's like the thing.
Same. Honestly, same. Yeah.
It's so important, like, it's so helpful, like, especially, like, in 2020, there's when the pandemic first happened, it was I feel like, honestly, I had a mental breakdown, like, it was the pandemic, I was also in the middle of, launching this, summit, we had 100 people promoting, we found out 10 days before our platform that we were using wasn't gonna show us the right conversions we needed, so while we had those 100 affiliates promoting, we rebuilt an entire summit platform also during the pandemic, and when the pandemic
Wow.
was, like, coming out, like, everything came down at once. I kinda had, like, this mental break, basically, and I stepped away from everything for a little bit, and one of the biggest tools that my doctor gave me was the journaling that he recommended, and that's where I finally started hearing my voice, I started feeling myself, I started being able to talk through things and see through things, so, personally, I do every night, I do, like, an end of day, like it started with just, like, one thing, one positive of the day. Then I added in, a friend of mine suggested this. It was like her and her boyfriend did this was the top 5 accomplishments of the day. So sometimes, so you're
Mm,
not just going to bed thinking about to-do lists, you're thinking about accomplishments. So sometimes I do that. I also often start my mornings with gratitude, or if my mind is super busy, I have actually a computer that is just for journaling. So it's like a real cheap knockoff computer that I purchased that's only for journaling, and I use it just to mind dump. So I mind dump everything that's going on in my thoughts in my head. And often what that does is bring clarity. It brings not only gratitude because reversing whatever negative thoughts or anything happening, like I'm seeing a lot more of it and I'm able to like talk it out basically, but I'm
mhm,
also getting a little bit more clarity and going deeper. Like I'm asking, okay, why does that matter? Okay, why is this? And then just continuing asking that why till I get to the root cause. So, that helps with business, it helps with personal, it helps with mental health, it helps with so many things. And then I have journals all over my house. I have journals in my, hiking bags. I have journals in my purses. I have journals everywhere. I have a journal just for travel. So I find like cool places that I'm hiking or traveling or exploring and, to make a quick note of like the moments that just happened, and being able to remember those and look back on that, I think is incredibly important.
Mm,
And I'll be honest, I don't really look back and read most of it, or at least I haven't yet. But just having like put it on paper actually helps me remember better. And then that
absolutely.
also it's massive. Like it increases your own creativity. I'm able to, especially when I have like a post or something I want to write about, like I blurb it all in my journal, and then I actually come back around and I write it, and it's fast. It takes me just minutes to write something instead. And then I'm continuing my creativity where if I just put it in AI, then I actually feel within a few days of you doing that, my creativity just drop. I can't think for myself, it feels
Yeah.
like sometimes, you know?
Yeah, it's funny because my path of journaling is frighteningly similar. Like I was working with a sales coach and he was huge on journaling. And I was like, I don't really need that. So for like the first 2 years of working with him, I was adamant, I don't need this, right? Like I'm just here because you're supposed to help me close more deals. And then finally I started to do it, but largely I was doing it because I kept hearing other people talking about it, right? Like I was new to all of this stuff, and so I'm listening to every podcast I can listen to, and it seemed like every guest I heard speaking talked about their journaling habit. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to try this. And in the beginning it was very just kind of transactional to like try to build a habit around it. And then I stopped doing it for a while because I kind of felt like I'd topped out and it wasn't really helping me anymore, right? And largely it had stopped helping me because I was doing it for the wrong reasons, right? Like while I was keeping this log and track of things, it was kind of on this mode of like, well, this is what other people do, so therefore I'm gonna do it because if it helps them, it'll help me. Versus like really getting into that place of like, okay, how does this thing need to look to really help me in a day-to-day thing. So during COVID, I started reading The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, and he talks about how Marcus Aurelius, in the middle of a war campaign, goes into his tent to write for no one other than himself. I kind of had this moment of like seeing all the hypocrisy around my efforts of avoiding this. And so during that, I just decided, okay, you know, what does this need to look like for me? And it fundamentally changed everything. Right now, it's very loose and very kind of like Socratic, and I'm just asking myself questions. I'm trying to get down to the root cause stuff, and that's super helpful. But sometimes I don't even answer the questions, but just having that space and it being really, really wide open, has been super helpful. And I actually have some journals that are just for stream of consciousness, and I don't ever go back and look at those, right?
Mhm.
But it is nice to have the other style of journal, right? Because much like you, I have journals for everything. So I have a journal for guitar now. I have a journal for my woodworking kind of path and experience, and they're all very different, and they've got their specific places here in my room,
Mhm.
that I kind of spend a lot of time in and everything.
Yeah.
Um, but I talk with a lot of people that don't have any kind of reflective practices around them and stuff, and I think that just makes the path of being a founder so much harder because you don't have any look back,
Yeah.
right? Um, Switching gears a little bit,
Well, I
we
just
talked a little bit about. Oh yeah,
Oh, I
please.
just wanna add to that because I find yeah, what you're saying, especially with the look back. So the stream of conscious I rarely do, but there's something that I look back on. But there is something that I do with that also like a lot of times like business ideas, solving problems, all that kind of stuff comes out when you're just just letting it all out. So what I do
Mhm.
is I just put like 2 stars next to it in the beginning if it's something I know I need to do, and then I come back to it and I just pull that out of my notes, so I don't have to go through the whole thing. I just, I pull out the little 2 asterisk places and I pull those into whatever I need to do. And from there, I can actually take that implementation. I do that with any kind of notes I do, whether I'm, watching something or whatever. That's
Yeah.
just kind of my method. So it's like going back and doing that. I do that in in my written ones too. Like I'll put a little star at the top of the page if it's something that I know that I want to come back to and do. So actually making
Huh.
sure that I come back and implement some of those things is still super important, and that's just a fast, easy way to, like, ensure you're getting it done.
Absolutely. I love, like, for a long time, I would procrastinate on journaling, right? Because there was this thing in my head of like, it's got to be perfect and it's got to like look a certain way. And now, I mean, it's all over the place. Like sometimes
Mhm.
there's little diagrams and little like asterisks and stars and stuff because if I'm going to use it for reference, I need to make it easy to come back and use it for reference,
Yeah.
right? And I also, and this took me a very long time. I need to be okay with the fact that like thoughts are going to come as they're going to come, right? So like while I might be doing a brain dump, a to do might show up that I need to get done, you know? And so being able to kind of jot it down and move past it versus like, well, I'm not allowed to be thinking about that stuff now. And that goes in this other journal and everything. Like it just build the practice of getting it out of your head and take the
Mhm.
perfection off of it and just use it for improvement, right? Like don't think about it trying to be perfect because it's probably not going to be, and that's okay.
I love that, I love that. The being okay with it not being perfect is also a practice that's super important for business owners because it goes back to everything that we're talking about with hiring and everything else as well, is like you have to get used to not everything is gonna be perfect in business and like, failed attempts, all these things, like there's not perfect is not the goal. The goal is to learn the lessons and to take action and see what works for you. And part of that, especially if you're going to be starting a journaling process, which I recommend everyone do. My mom just
Same.
started and she was like, "This is the best thing that you've been telling me for years is the best thing ever." And I was like, "Yeah, I know. Uh, everything I say is right." No, I'm kidding. I'm perfect. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But but I would highly suggest because it can be so overwhelming for people is just start with one thing. Choose one thing. Choose one piece of gratitude in the morning or choose like one positive from the day. Just start with one little thing and then and commit to doing that daily and then that spirals into this is just something I actually enjoy doing and I it's a part of my habits and it's a part of like especially when I'm traveling or doing certain things, go through my photos of the day and I often put them in stories or something like that, and then I go and journal, like, what that experience was, and that really helps me, like, remember all the amazing things that just happened that day. So, just throwing that in there.
I love the idea of just like starting with one thing, right? Because by this point, I've been journaling for so long and I've been such a big advocate about it. Like, I'm kind of a bad person to come talk to about it because I'm like, oh, just start, you know, and stuff like this. But like starting with just like one thing, I think is really interesting. And I love talking about this with people because it's one of those things to where in the beginning, you don't realize progress a lot, you know, when you start developing a journaling habit. Like, I mean, if you go to the gym for 5 days in a row, you're going to be sore and you're probably going to like at least think you look a little bit better and stuff like this, right? After like 2 weeks of journaling, like you're probably still like trying to figure out like how to get it out of your head and onto the paper and stuff like this, right? So I talk with a lot of people who will get stuck in the early days of trying to build a journaling habit because they're like, well, this doesn't really seem to be helping. And it's like it takes a while, right? Like the progress that we realize from journaling is slower, right, than just about anything else, right? I mean, if you spend, you know, 10 hours in a month like learning how to like write code, you're going to be better at writing code, right? And you're going to be able to see it, you're going to be able to feel it and realize it. But it's like, okay, I'm just better at sitting down and like jotting on this paper. That has to be enough in the early days, right? Because you're still trying to figure out what it needs to be for you.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I agree, and I think that, like, what you mentioned before about, like, not putting pressure of perfectionism on it too is super helpful because what journaling is it's personal to each of us in how it shows up and in how we utilize it in the best way that we, find for practicing it. Like, if you just do one positive of the day, it helps you remember your day. It also prompts you end up doing more if you're doing one thing of gratitude, and I'm not talking about like just wake up and say, "Oh, I'm thankful for my coffee today. Okay, I'm moving on." Like you have to like you got to really like dig a little bit deeper in order to make the most of it. Like and
mhm,
try to get creative with it and be a little bit more intentional. The other thing
I
that I
love
just
that.
like, it's super helpful, I think, also is the brain dump of things, like, especially, like, my mind is racing, we are in a busy world, there's a lot going on. Just brain dump it all, unless you feel like going to a therapist every damn day and, like, explaining everything going on in your mind. Like, if
Mhm,
you even just, like, just once in a while, like, put it on paper, you'll realize those stop instead of, like, repeating those thoughts for days and days and days and, them constantly popping up, they're actually disappearing or they're actually getting resolved or you're feeling confident in your decisions. So,
yeah.
it's a big confidence builder, I think, in general.
I I love that idea of like, don't just write down that you're thankful for the coffee, right? Because like years ago, in my journaling practice, I decided I was going to work on gratitude, right? And so I decided to work on this thing to where who do I appreciate in my circle, right? I was networking a lot, I was making a lot of introductions, and I was just trying to kind of figure out how I was going to navigate this world. And I started to do this thing that every day I journal, I'm going to write down three people that I'm thankful for, right? Just like have in my network and to know. And then I started to realize that I kept picking the same people over and over and over again, right? And so then I was like, okay, well, let's make this a little bit harder. Let's make this hopefully a little bit better. And so then I decided I'm a big fan of like trapping myself into like good behavior and like kind of putting stakes on things. And so I had this epiphany that if I'm writing the same person down twice in a month, I must appreciate this person so much. I need to pick up the phone immediately and call them and say, like, hey, thank you so much for being in my life. I appreciate you so much, and just, expressing this gratitude. Now,
Yeah.
I'm better about this now, but at the time, like this really put a lot of focus into like, okay, who else can I appreciate? Who else can I be grateful for? Because it felt a little cheesy to pick up the phone and call some people I know and be like, hey man, I just wanted to say like thank you for like, being in my circle, eventually I normalized it because I ran out of people and I started to like have to start making these phone calls. But choosing to push myself of not just listing the same people, don't just, well, I woke up on this side of the grass, so therefore we're winning. Like all of that stuff, I think is helpful. But if you're really trying to kind of build reflective practices, I think we kind of owe it to ourselves to really kind of push ourselves. And so that trap was huge because in the beginning, like it really put the fear into me because like I was like, everyone's gonna think I'm so cheesy if I'm just calling everyone and being like, hey, I just appreciate you. And so it really started to kind of develop this gratitude muscle, that's been helpful in so many other ways. But I love the don't just like, oh, I'm so thankful for this coffee. I remember writing that actually like in a very early thing because one of my other traps was I was co-working in a coffee shop, so like they had dedicated space, and so I'd show up every morning and I'd get a cup of coffee, and I wasn't allowed to drink from that cup of coffee until I finished my journaling in the morning, and so that would lead to me being like, oh, I'm so excited to like get through this so I can drink the coffee and everything else like that. So it's just hilarious to me that you said, don't just be thankful for the coffee, because I can remember writing that of just like trying to find something to be like happy for. But the more you build that muscle, the easier it is. So,
I love that. I love that. And then that as I really actually like that you call people and give them that gratitude. So I know that that was like a push for you. But you can do it like in voice notes and things like that too, because people love hearing that. And that's good for your own, just, supporting your people around you as well. It's a I mean, it's a networking tool, even though that's not the intention of it. It's literally
mhm,
being grateful. And that's something that I think spreads positivity and supports others as much as it supports you. So I love that you do that. And also, yeah, giving yourself a reward for doing it. I mean, maybe the reward can be like drinking coffee while you're doing it. And all right, last one on the journaling I just want to also say is like for the gratitude, especially what I find is most helpful is when I wake up in a bad mood or something is really, really bothering me. And this kind of goes back to the lessons and stuff like that from failures, or if I failed at something, what I try to do is journal into what happened and what's the gratitude that or the lesson that I can be grateful for.
yep,
What is the result of this that I can be grateful for? What doors could it possibly open? What changes can I make from this? How can I optimize from this and how can I learn from this? And
mhm.
what part of it am I grateful for? So it's a way to turn those lessons and failures into actual gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely. And now it's such a part of my process that anytime I'm feeling any kind of like anxiety, I now have this kind of like handwritten process of navigating through to figure out, okay, what is open in my head that's causing this kind of washover and stuff, right? Because like as a business owner, I'm gonna carry a lot of open loops is how I refer to them, right? I've got
Mhm.
clients, I've got pipeline, I've got, other things that I've got to be doing. But there's those times to where I'm also trying to make sure that at the end of the day I can shut it down and just be present, with my family and stuff. And so sometimes that's hard to do, but journaling is now my go-to thing of like if I can like feel that pull, when I'm supposed to be like off work, but I'm like still like I'll just grab my journal and I'll take 15 minutes and I'll just kind of like write through all of these things, right? And I'll just kind of sit with it. Like, is this coming from my pipeline? No. Okay. Is this do I owe something to a client? No. Okay. Where, and then eventually I can find it. But it took a long time because I used to do this thing to where like, well, this shouldn't bother me. Right.
Yeah.
And I would just kind of beat myself up. If you're saying should to yourself, right, there's a lot of room to just not beat yourself up. And now, I don't should myself and I don't beat myself up for, having anxiety whenever it does hit me. I just sit down and try to find the source of it. So it's a signal, that you might have too much on your
Mhm.
plate. It's not something that you should just not be open to or tell yourself it shouldn't bother you and stuff like that. And that took me a very long time. But now it's just so nice to have this process of being able to work through anything that's bothering me as opposed to trying to talk myself out of it or, the other things that people do.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I love how it brings you presence too, because it's bringing you out of that
100%.
anxious mind into, like, what's actually present and being able to get those thoughts out so that you can be present, and that's the ultimate goal, I think,
Oh
is
yeah, absolutely. Right. Like there was the period of realizing like how much I was beating myself up in my own self-talk. And I think that journaling is probably the best way to see I call it painting yourself into a corner, right? If you're beating yourself up of why does this always happen to me and blah blah blah, woe is me and everything, like you're 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 hamstringing yourself, right? It makes it really hard to make any forward progress if you're just beating yourself up. And I didn't realize how much I was beating myself up over my failures and especially being in sales because the role is so filled with rejection. I could find myself endlessly focusing on the no's. And I think it's important to
true.
go back over your no's and watch your tape and find the improvements and everything. But
Yeah.
if you're solely focused on the no's, you're probably, wearing the rejection heavier than you need to.
Yeah. I mean, with everything, like, and it takes, in general, mentally, like, it takes what, like 5 or 6 yes, you have to like to 5 or 6 yeses or something like that to override one negative or one no. And I
Hmm.
think that it's probably a little bit more than I don't remember the exact number, but I know it's a pretty high ratio of positives to outweigh a negative. And if you are especially in a space where rejection is like a major thing, marketing and especially sales, you're going to get a lot more rejection than you are going to get either people not responding or yeses or people grateful for your work in that. And you're not always seeing it because once you've made the sale, you pass it on to delivery, and so you might not actually see the impact that you're getting from that. So reminding yourself of that, and also especially when it comes on the marketing side of the things, your no's are just as important as the yeses, because the no's are going to teach you why. What is this your ideal client? Is this your ideal avatar? Do you need to create a new asset that actually supports your ideal avatar? Is there something else that you can do to nurture the people who aren't yet ready for your services? Like, there's so much value in a no, in a failure, in a rejection, in all these pieces that really supports your marketing and your sales. And
Yeah.
how to talk to people too. I'm sure you see that a lot in the sales side of things.
Oh, like one of the things that I have to tell everybody about is like, don't try to take sales advice from people that have never sat on a seat, right? Because it always comes out as like, well, screw them. They didn't know what they wanted. No, they knew what they wanted. It just wasn't this, right? And so it always ends up being, I would say, very unhelpful advice, right? So it's not super helpful.
Yeah.
Um, and talking a little bit more about that, you and I were kind of talking about being online, right? And the concept of a personal brand and everything. And you were talking about this thing about being authentic, right? And how that conveys not just from like the content that you make and how you show up on social media and stuff, but also in how you live and how you run your business. Where do you see people getting misaligned with that stuff when it comes to like making content, developing a personal brand, being yourself online? Where do people get stuck?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think people get stuck with, and we all do this, is our ego chimes in like, "Oh, you shouldn't share that," or "Oh, that's too vulnerable," or "Oh, that's, we're just trying to protect ourselves in the end, like
Mhm.
that's all the ego's trying to do. It's not like the ego is the devil, it's just a protector. And when you do get vulnerable and share from an authentic, real story, real self, real experiences, that's when people can actually relate to you more as well as your story. So,
Hmm.
throwing the AI slop around is not going to, just constantly throwing the AI slop around is not going to, do what you want it to do if you can't also add some authenticity to it and
Yeah.
show up as yourself, because that's who people want to work with you right now, especially in a world where we have AI. Connection is still super important, and people
Mhm.
are looking to connect and work with people who they align with and who they feel like they can trust. And they can't trust you if you're not being authentic and you're not sharing the truth. Now, I'm not saying go share every detail of the terrible experience with your baby daddy, baby mommy, whatever you've got going on in your life. Like, yeah, it's important to share pieces of your life and that you are struggling in areas. And it's also okay to share your wins in areas as well. I would
Mhm.
suggest also framing it with like a lesson, like, or something strategic, like this is how I got there, or this is what happened, and this was the action I took and the result. Like that's going to be a more valuable share with authenticity than just throwing out whatever AI tells you to put out.
I like that. Yeah. So switching gears just a little bit, Michelle, because I want to be respectful of your time. We're gonna move into the rapid fire portion of this. And like I say, it's a rapid fire. I'm not really expecting rapid responses, right? I like a deeper response on this. Um, but when someone is going out on their own as a founder and they're starting to think about growing marketing specifically, what do they need to be thinking about so that way they're on the path to success? What would be your advice to someone who's starting out when it comes to like their marketing or hiring their marketing team? What do they need to be thinking about?
Yeah, so is this somebody who's already kind of built like, multiple 6 or 7 figures looking to build the marketing team, or would you say like
Well,
they're fresh start?
fresh start, right? They're just going out, hanging their shingle. They're fed up with working for someone else, and they want to go out on their own and do a thing. But they do want to build something, and have a shot of success or at success. What do you think they need to be thinking about in the world of like marketing or team building?
Yeah, so I mean, first I would say like start with your product and what it is, the outcome that you're trying to deliver. This is the marketing side is, your ideal, like the outcome that you are delivering, and focus on the ideal avatar that needs that outcome and that you're able to support with the product that you are delivering them. So focus, all marketing is outcome driven. You want to be focusing on that depending, there's different marketing styles, of course, you can do like really pushing them, saying, and using a lot of like emotional tactics and things like that. You can also do a little bit like emotional tactics to pull them in. And that's where the authenticity side comes in, where you're pulling people in by telling your story, sharing examples, sharing what has and hasn't worked for you, and, authentically being yourself to pull customers towards you. And there's also, there's so many ways that you can approach it. The most important, and this is something I suggest, especially for service providers, is to be starting with like sharing examples and wins, like sharing like a win that you got and how you got it for someone is going to help spread awareness of the product and the outcome that you deliver a lot faster, and also help build reputation, authenticity, your avatar, all that kind of stuff. um so yeah, like basically, starting from scratch marketing, like you need to have your ideal avatar, you need to have the outcome that you're delivering, and then figuring out the best way to speak to that ideal avatar and to that outcome. Now, if you're then going to be going, if you're looking at, building a team, you need to really be looking at I mean, depending on where you are and what kind of product, you can start with agencies, you can start with, fractional individuals hiring per piece. But you really, I would recommend if you're really, really startup that you start with the strategy on your end. Unless you are really not that person, then you probably should partner with somebody who's a marketing strategist. And this is not just hiring, this is more of a partner because they have to get deep in it and you probably don't have the capital to pay the kind of person that you need to lead the marketing department. So that's always an option and they can help you, make sure you have the right team in place, things like that.
I was curious how, and this is a slide aside, I'm just curious, how does someone know if they need that marketing co-founder versus going down the path of, figuring out marketing themselves? Is there a signal that you look for, or is there like an assessment that like is helpful with kind of like helping people understand like, because it's a deeper well than people think that it is, right? So, how should someone kind of figure out if it's something that they should be upskilling themselves on, trying to do themselves, or let's go find a marketing co-founder?
I think that's dependent on your personality and yourself because if you are if you are such an operator and you're a product developer and you're like really into this one thing and marketing just makes you cringe, you hate it, you suck at it, it's probably a good idea to consider partnering with someone. If you can feel like you're figuring out marketing enough and you understand how to sell and share what your product does and the outcome that you are helping people with, then I think that working on figuring out more of the marketing yourself is better than probably than cutting part of your, equity with somebody.
Yeah,
That being said, if you're not making progress with with your marketing, then you probably should be reconsidering what your other options are. I'm not saying that you suck at it, but you either invest marketers invest a lot of money to and a lot of time into being the experts in their fields. It's not just, oh yeah, I know how to do this one thing. It's, you invest in training, you invest in split testing, you invest time and energy into, you're learning psychology, you're learning sociology, you're going deep into data. Like there's a lot behind the actual marketing that's not just, okay, I'm going to write this sales page and put out a couple emails.
yeah,
So it really comes down to what you love to do and how much are you willing to give away equity or your time and your energy and your efforts. And if those efforts aren't working, then are you willing to consider either a high payment to someone or equity partnership?
interesting. Okay, cool. I appreciate the clarity on that because I think a lot of people get told. I mean, I was at an event one time and I was talking with a guy, and he was just kind of standing by himself, right? And so this is one of my tricks to like networking as an introvert is like I'll go find the other introverts that are kind of the wallflowers and like ask them who they want to meet, And so
Okay.
I'm talking to this guy and I was like, "Hey, like who are you here to meet?" And he's like, I'm here to try to find a co-founder." I was like, "Well, you don't sound very excited about this concept of getting a co-founder." And he goes, "Well, I don't really want one, but my investor is saying that I have to have one or else he's not going to invest." And that
Mm,
really bothered me, right? Because like I know sales is a hard job and I know that not everyone is cut out for it, but I want everyone who wants to try to have a fair shot at being able to kind of figure it out. But if it's not for you, then it's not for you. And so I think both those paths have value, but I think we sometimes get caught up in the best practices of others and the unicorns that we read about online and stuff like that. So I appreciate that distinction. If you hate it, probably not the right thing for you. But on the other side of it, don't tell yourself you're great at it if you're not. You should have some feedback loops, right? Some metrics that are hopefully not as vanity metrics and that they're actually like leading you towards the success that you're looking for. And I think a lot of people get caught up in that as well.
and especially
Next
if
question,
you're
Michelle.
Oh, sorry. Just also, if you're talking to an investor, like they're, they can if they can, add extra finances to cover what they're needing, then that's one thing. But I will also add in there that partnering with the right people, so the right operator and marketer partnering together, I've seen that be super successful and super fast for people to gain traction.
That's cool.
So
Yeah. I think I've heard more horror stories than I've heard like serendipitous kismet stories that like this was like the right partner at the right time and stuff like that. So it's nice to hear that there are positive outcomes.
Yeah, it's like a
Um,
marriage, you really have to vet them. So
that's fair. Yeah, absolutely. Next question. When we talked a lot about being online, right? And work with a lot of internet driven businesses. What is the tweet or Facebook post or business mantra that you can appreciate now, but you had to learn it the hard way before you could appreciate it in the form of a tweet?
mm. I think that it's going to be that shiny ball syndrome and not trying to do everything at once. I am known for trying to do 3 or 4, like, main projects or businesses at once, and,
Mhm.
or I have been known for that in the past, and I think that it's hard to be full into one and get the things that you need done for that one, when you have so many going. So if you can get your foundational business running and operating solidly, have the right team in place to free up your time and everything is covered and you're, really scaling at that level and then you have time to invest in these other projects, then I think that's probably the better solution. But just again, make sure that you go back and you reevaluate all the projects you have going and what is, adding to the bottom line, hindering, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. I actually have a 'cause I've done the same thing, like, I opened another business because I was like, "Oh, well, I'm smart. I figured this out enough. We're gonna dilute our focus," and I tried to launch something else, and it did not go very well. And so since then, I actually have a notepad on my phone of, like, business ideas that just once again, as a place to get it out of my head, right?
Mhm.
I don't actually think I'm gonna launch the majority of these businesses, but it's just nice to kinda be able to kinda put it away into a place and, periodically I'll have someone in like, "I want a business idea," and I'm like, "Here, you can have any one of these because I think that these are cool ideas, but I don't have the time or the focus to really, like, do them because I need my focus for this thing over here." And that's super helpful because before having that habit of writing it down so that way it could be kinda contained and out of my head, I would just keep thinking about it and keep thinking about it, and largely that's what led to me trying to launch something else while I was still trying to figure this thing out and it going not the way that it was supposed to, was, I just couldn't stop thinking about it because I didn't really have a process for getting it out of my head.
I
Last
think
question.
that
Oh, please.
that no, I just wanna say that's super helpful. Another thing that I add to that, and this is also to, like, it helps with, improving your current business, is I do, like, a quarterly planning. I do an
Mhm.
annual ideal big picture and, what's happening per month, and then once this project is wrapping up, this project's initiated, and then, reevaluating every quarter. So, like, I have this great idea for this new project that has nothing to do with my main business. Okay, let's get these things for my main business in order in the next 1 or 2 quarters and then start looking at that project. So then you at least
Yeah.
know you have, like, it's gonna happen if you're, like, crazy excited about it. Um, but you're not, like, you're not avoiding the things that you're actually needing to get done to grow what you do have started.
I love that a lot because, like, to me, that sounds very similar to the idea of, like, I'm not gonna drink the coffee until my journaling is done, right? I'm trapping myself kind of into good behavior a little bit. So, like, it's okay to have ideas, right? But ultimately, if you're running a business, the business has to run, and if you're the person running it, like, earn that side hustle, earn that experiment that you wanna go run by setting goals and making sure that you're moving the important things forward. I dig that a lot. That would've saved me a lot of heartache.
And some
Last
ideas some ideas are actually meant for other people too, so be free with your ideas is something I run by,
Oh,
because I think
absolutely. Yeah.
it's
Like,
important.
there's a bajillion ideas, right? Like, and it takes a lot of work and effort and focus to get an idea out of the idea state and into early modes of production, right? And so be very open with the ideas, like, they're a dime a dozen, literally.
Yeah.
Uh, Last question, Michelle. When you think about your time in the space and everything that you've been through, and you've seen some things happen and some shifts happen over your time as a founder, what is your word of warning to someone who's going out today, independent of what kind of business they're going to run?
Don't give up. Like, don't just, like, say, "Oh, this one thing, I failed at it. Let's try again." Like, we've all tried a million things, like, it goes back to, like, learning that lesson and, perseverance, really, like, pushing through and, figuring out how to make it happen. If you really want something bad enough, like, you won't give up and you'll find a way to make it work. Um,
Epic.
I think that's
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that. Yeah, like so much of this is just stringing the lessons through, right? Because you're going to have a lot of failures. And I used to be so hamstrung by the idea of failing, right? Like if I fail, I'm going to be an idiot, and not, all this super negative self talk around failure that would keep me from even trying anything, and having to kind of reframe all that through working with coaches and through journaling and everything else. Now it's like, okay, I like I don't think I'm running full tilt at failure like some people that I talk to and probably some people you talk to, but I've got this healthy appreciation of it that it's not going to work on the first stroke. I'm probably going to have to figure it out. And so then I'm just kind of going into it primed for that, right? Primed to like learn the lessons that show up on it. Michelle,
Yeah,
if people want
absolutely.
to come learn more about you, or if they want to hang out with you online and kind of follow your path, where's the best place for them to keep up with you?
Yeah, so we of course have the website BellaConnections.com. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. It's Michelle with one L, Michele Lambert. And then Bella Connections is the business. So any of those things you'll find us. We also have a podcast, The Aligned Operator. And I'll
Hmm.
send you those links too, so you have some stuff as well.
Perfect. All right, Michelle, thank you so much for coming on and doing this. I love the idea of being able to kind of talk about like hiring and sourcing because it is one of those things that a lot of people struggle with. And I really just appreciate your journey of kind of not not thinking that this was the lane you were going to be end up in, but just kind of like finding your place in it and evolving it over time. I think a lot of people will get a lot of value from this. I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you. This was a lot of fun. So thank you so much for having me today.
You're more than welcome. Well, I'll talk to you very soon. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.